To stream or not to stream? That is the question.
No. I am the Father.
And here we go.
That belongs in a museum!
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
This is Sparta!
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Dr. Grant, my dear Dr. Sattler, welcome to Jurassic Park.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Easily Entertained. I'm your host, Bryson Olson. This podcast, we talk all about entertainment. It's a great time. This week, we are going to be talking about streaming services. I feel like everyone is pretty well associated with streaming services at this point. They have been around, I think, for almost a whole decade. So yeah, it's pretty fantastic. We love streaming services. They're pretty great. I think probably the most well-known one is, of course, Netflix. I think Netflix kind of started the trend of streaming services. I think what kind of got streaming services going, though, was before Netflix. Because typically cable companies would have like on-demand services. So you can think like Comcast, DirecTV, those kind of platforms. They would have like on-demand services, and they would be kind of like streaming platforms where they would have different shows and movies that would kind of rotate out that you could watch, like not according to the TV schedule. And I think that is still a thing. I'm pretty sure on demand is still like a common thing with cable companies. However, I think that's where streaming kind of got its idea. Because Netflix, before they were a streaming service, they were like a rental service. So you would, because I actually remember this, because my parents, they would rent movies off of Netflix and they would send you a DVD that you would keep for like a week, I think, and then you have to send it back and like so forth. And so it was kind of like Blockbuster almost, or Redbox, which surprisingly Redbox now I've heard is sort of a streaming service, not in the same aspect. Like I still think you have to rent the movies, but you can now do it like digitally, because I know I've seen like a Redbox app on my TV before, and so I think it's the same concept of renting, just now you can do it online, which you could do with a lot of other services as well, like Google Play and Vudu and Amazon. You can rent different movies and things like that, and so like that does not kind of surprise me. But before streaming, Netflix did rentals. And then when did they change? I think the early 2010s, they started doing a streaming service. And I remember this mainly because we had Netflix on our original Wii. So not like the Wii U, we had it on the Wii. So I know it was somewhere around the Wii's lifespan where Netflix started doing streaming, and which, of course, if you didn't know, it's kind of hard not to know. Streaming is just basically having on-demand movies that you're not having to pay individually for. It's a whole catalog that you can watch at any time. Let me see. When did Netflix start streaming? When did Netflix start streaming? That... What? Was in 2007? That doesn't seem right. Maybe they did. When they started in January 2007 directly. Huh. I don't think it grew in popularity that quick though. I'm kind of curious. So we're going to pull that up because I am now very curious. Redbox, 2007, it will launch streaming video. I feel like 2009 is when they started doing originals. So it's expanding. I'm very curious because I feel like they were still doing DVDs for a long time. And so I'm curious when like streaming became big. Like around 2012, 2013, I think is when it finally like took off for like streaming rather than just DVDs. Yeah, that looks to be about right. 2012, 2013. So the streaming has actually been around for a lot longer than I thought. But so yeah, then it could offer movies and TV online rather than trying to rent them through DVDs or trying to pay for individual shows like you would with cable companies sometimes, which kind of exploded this market because now we have so many streaming services like Disney Plus, Hulu, HBO, Paramount Plus, Amazon Prime. Now we have all these different kinds of video platforms that you can stream off of. And I feel like everyone definitely has their preference. So I had asked on my main Instagram account, which is at Bryson Olsen 2000. You can go check that out because that's my main stuff. Also, be sure to check out the podcast's Instagram at Easily Entertained Podcast. It's pretty great. But so I had asked on my main account, just because more people follow me currently on there, what their preferred streaming service was. I asked them a bunch of questions. This was the first one. So a lot of people for their preferred streaming services was actually usually Netflix, which kind of surprised me a little bit. I feel like Netflix has been sort of lacking a bit lately. I think they've been getting really good with their originals, which a lot of people agreed, because another question I had asked was which platform has the best originals? I personally think HBO is more a guarantee that their originals are really good. I think HBO really knows how to produce their shows and movies really nicely. Like we talk about The Last of Us, that is doing phenomenally well. It's very well produced. You have Game of Thrones, you have Euphoria, which is a phenomenally done show. I remember getting super into that last spring when the second season came out. That was very good. But Netflix is also doing fairly decent with their originals. I think more so lately than before, because they do have Stranger Things now. I know House of Cards is one. Orange is the New Black, I think, is a Netflix original, or it started off Netflix and I think Netflix acquired it. That one was pretty good. You have The Witcher. And you have I feel like a lot of their movies have been pretty decent. I loved Pinocchio because we talked about that on this podcast a couple months ago. They have like Pinocchio, Klaus. There's more. Sea Beast. I talked about that on another podcast. That one was really good. Gave me very much like How to Train Your Dragon vibes to that one. But so a lot of people, they did say they think Netflix has the best originals and it's usually their preferred streaming platform. So Netflix has normally been at like the top of the leaderboard. I feel like they've been getting very close to being beat out by a lot of things. I think personally, I like HBO and Disney Plus more. I think you get more bang for your buck with those. But I still use Netflix a lot. And I feel like Netflix is the platform that most companies want to get their product on. They usually want their movies or TV shows on Netflix, I think. And then it kind of varies on a couple other ones. And then I had also asked what platform a lot of people would get rid of. Surprisingly, Netflix was the top one for that category as well. And I do think that is due to Netflix being off and on. They sometimes have really good things, and then sometimes they are kind of lacking in their catalog, which kind of sucks. I think they go back and forth because they rotate out a lot of their stuff. All their originals they keep, and then a lot of their shows they keep for usually a long time, but it kind of varies with that as well. But with like movies and things, they switch out a lot of things, which can kind of be their downfall, which I get because they kind of sign contracts with a lot of different studios to have movies. And so with that, those contracts can run out, and perhaps a studio who is partnered with someone else wants to get their movie or TV show on that other platform. Like HBO is linked with Warner Brothers. So I think like Netflix used to have like a lot of Scooby-Doo stuff and Cartoon Network, and now a lot of that has switched over to HBO because they have those binding contracts now. And so it makes more sense since Warner Brothers owns, I think they own HBO, or they're like in the same realm, I think. Those now have a contract and they're more binding. And so it makes more sense to have those Warner Brothers properties on HBO rather than Netflix. And so I feel like that makes sense why a lot of people would actually get rid of Netflix, is because a lot of companies now have been acquiring different studios. So Disney Plus now, because Disney now owns Marvel and they own Star Wars and they own Fox Entertainment now and National Geographic. So they are having a lot of those shows and movies all be put on there directly, and they're not going to really put them anywhere else. And so that one makes a lot of sense. That one, like, people of course are going to want Disney because they want all of those properties, because now you can like watch Deadpool and Logan and all the Marvel stuff on Disney Plus, and you can watch Pixar, and you can watch National Geographic, and you can watch Star Wars, and they're all kind of encompassed by Disney, and Netflix is kind of losing their stride a little bit with that. Which kind of sucks because I feel like lately they've been doing really good with their originals. Like I said, I think the latest season of Stranger Things was fantastic. I loved it. I was so hyped, and I'm really excited for the final season. I believe next year. I don't think it's coming this year, but next, I'm pretty sure in 2024. I cannot tell you for sure, but I'm pretty sure. But so Netflix used to be like the absolute head of streaming services. Everyone had Netflix. I think most people still have Netflix. And so, you know, it's been at like the top of its game. There we go. But with that has come a lot of downfalls as well. They have several times upped their prices, and they've made more tiers now. So now you have like a basic plan where things only stream in like standard definition. You can only use it on like a very limited number of devices. And I think it's $10, I think, for that very lowest price. I'm pretty sure for just like standard. And then it goes up to, I think, like $20. Which I feel like is kind of expensive for a streaming service, especially if it's one where you're kind of starting to lack. It makes more sense for families because you can have a lot more devices on that higher tier one, and they stream it, I think, usually up to 4K, I'm pretty sure. And so that's pretty nice. However, if you've been paying attention in a little bit of entertainment news lately, Netflix is trying to crack down on password sharing. So what this means is they don't want people using accounts that aren't in the same household. Because a lot of people would share their passwords with other people, and then you could have a ton of devices that are not all within the same house on that service. And a lot of other services do that because that makes sense. You just got to log in with your account. That doesn't really matter otherwise. But they had announced that they were going to really crack down on it so that it only included places with the same Wi-Fi network. So I believe it was last week, they had announced that essentially to keep your devices logged in on Netflix, they were going to sign you out every 31 days. And you'd have to sign back in on a home Wi-Fi. You had to set a home Wi-Fi. And if it logged in elsewhere, it would block the device. And you couldn't log in from there other than on home Wi-Fi. And I had asked, once again, on my main account, what people thought of that idea. And the general consensus, it's not even the general consensus, it was everybody, thinks that idea was ridiculous, but on Netflix's part. Because that affects a lot of people. And if you think about families in particular, college kids, people who are traveling, whether it's for vacation or for work, or people who just aren't always at home and go back and forth between places, having that password sharing restriction affects those kinds of people. And I agree, because I'm a college kid and I am logged in on my parents' Netflix account. I think they're Disney and they're Amazon Prime as well. I also pay for a streaming service. I pay for HBO and I log in on their devices with that so they can watch it, because I'm kind of mooching off them for some streaming services. So it kind of makes sense that I'm like, hey, you guys can use my HBO. It's not like a big deal because they're paying way more for streaming services than I am. And so like that makes sense. And it's been a general consensus that people think the cracking down on password sharing is a little ridiculous, because if people don't care, why should it matter? And Netflix's thought process behind this was that they could make more money because they'd crack down on people sharing accounts, and then they would mean they get new members because people sign up for Netflix. But that isn't the case, because if they are just logging people out and they won't let them sign back in unless they're on a home Wi-Fi, people will just stop using Netflix because other streaming services let them do that. Like HBO, Disney, Hulu, Paramount, Amazon, whatever. You don't have to worry about password sharing because they let you log in. It doesn't matter. They're still making money. It's not like they're losing money with password sharing. Not everyone is on like the same account. No, it's usually families that are paying for a general account and they just have different profiles. Like me and my family. There are 6 people in our family. We have 6 profiles, I think, on Netflix and on Disney Plus, and not on HBO. I think we only have 3 because it's me, my mom, and my brother. But we all generally use those 3 profiles. But so Netflix trying to crack down on that means they would just lose a lot of business. And if they're signing people out, even on home Wi-Fis, that would frustrate a lot of people. Because think about usually signing in with TVs. TVs don't, like TVs, Fire Sticks, like Roku sticks, like the streaming stick type stuff that you can just plug in and turn your TV sort of into a smart TV. Those types of devices do not have password remembering. Computers, phones, laptops, iPads, that kind of stuff, they do have password remembering, so that's less of an issue for those kind of devices. But what people are usually viewing streaming services on is a form of a TV, whether it's a TV itself or a streaming stick. Those devices do not have password remembering. So if Netflix decides to start logging people out and you have to manually log back in trying to put in your email and password every time, every 31 days, you're not going to want to be using Netflix. That will be the general consensus. They're like, well, this is a pain in the butt to actually log back in to this account. I'll just stop using it. And people will generally just not log in, and because that is inconvenient, and they will go to another streaming service where it's already logged in and they're not being logged out. Because these types of services have become a convenience, and logging people out every 31 days makes Netflix not convenient anymore. So people will immediately go to another service, and then maybe after a couple months or a month of not using Netflix because it's annoying to sign back in, people will just cancel their subscription. Therefore, Netflix will be losing money by doing this password sharing restriction. And that's going completely against their idea of wanting to make more money by doing this, because they think more people will sign up for accounts. And it's like, I understand that to a point, because you don't want everyone using the same accounts. However, if you're doing the logging out thing, that would make it inconvenient for people who even like the service, because it will be obnoxious to have to do that every 31 days. You don't have to do that with almost any account, not just streaming services. Google, YouTube, basically the same thing. Facebook, Instagram, social media, whatever. You don't have to re-log in every 31 days. In fact, usually if you're using it consistently, they keep you logged in. Most of the time, they only log you out if you're showing inactivity on different accounts. That's when other accounts for things will start to log you out. So with Netflix saying for even active users that they will log them out every 31 days, that makes their service inconvenient. Therefore, people do not want to use it and will lose them money because people will start to cancel their services. And so after that initial announcement that Netflix was going to be doing that, they received a ton of backlash on social media. They've been receiving it for a while because Netflix was saying they were going to crack down on password sharing anyways. But because of that recently, they received even more backlash. And then I believe it was yesterday or 2 days ago as of recording this, Netflix came out and said that that statement that was released was done by accident. Whether that is true or not, I doubt it's actually true, because I think what happened is, getting all that backlash, Netflix realized they are going to lose so much money if they were to do that. I get why they want to, but it's not going to be convenient for people, and therefore no one's going to want to use Netflix. And I like Netflix, I'm not going to lie, but it is not my preferred streaming service already. I'm not going to pay for another Netflix account if they're starting to log people out. I'm sure my own parents would cancel Netflix as well. Because I remember talking to my mom one time, and she was even debating on canceling Netflix before, because they go back and forth. Netflix isn't always the most used streaming service, I feel like, now. I think they're still, like, generally the highest, but most people now have a lot of other streaming services that have a lot of other properties, and so they're realizing Netflix may not be all it's cracked up to be now. But so Netflix had come out and said that that was an accident being released, which I don't necessarily believe to be very true. I think they just got all that backlash and they were like, this might be a bad idea. But then, upon reading an article about that, supposedly they won't be doing that version of password sharing, but instead charging more to have devices that are outside of your home area be logged in. Once again, I do understand that Netflix wants to make more money this way, but having to pay more for devices that are not home will once again make problems for Netflix. Because think about using Netflix on your phone. Some people, when they're at work, if they have like breaks, can watch Netflix on their phones. But are they logged into home Wi-Fi? Not necessarily. So they may be getting charged even though the device itself is regularly on home network. But if it's not, like when they're using it at work, that could be charged extra, which I think is a little ridiculous. I do understand. I understand that Netflix wants to make more money, of course. They're a company that's just the result of capitalism. They want to make more and more money. However, trying to crack down on people sharing their accounts when they are voluntarily sharing their accounts. It's not like people are not like aware of password sharing. Typically, if you have a Netflix account logged in, it's because someone gave you the login. They were like, yeah, you can use this account. It's like, that's great. Especially in families. Even like sometimes extended families are doing that because it's no use for people to be paying for services when they're not using them all the time. And so it's kind of beneficial to share it among whole families, because if one family isn't using it very much and then another uses it a lot more, the one who uses it a lot more is probably more inclined to share it with the people who hardly ever use it, because they're like, oh yeah, you barely ever use it. Here you go. You can log in on mine and just watch whenever you really want to. And so I think with people voluntarily letting people use their accounts, it should be fine, because it's not like we're not paying for it. Like there could be more Netflix accounts, but what's to really stop people? Because Netflix does offer usually like a free trial. I'm not usually sure how long, but what's to stop people from just recreating emails over and over again when they hear that something is on Netflix, and they just make a fake email and sign up for a free trial and then still cancel it? That's not going to make them money either, because it's a free trial. They're not going to be charged for it, especially if they cancel before the trial's done. So I get that Netflix wants to make more money, but they've kind of hit like a peak. It's not like they're not making money. They make so much money with current accounts. It's a subscription service. They get money every month for these accounts. And so it's kind of just Netflix being a bit greedy and wanting to get more money. So I think it's a little dumb that they want to crack down on password sharing. It's understandable, but to like a degree, but I don't think it should happen. And if it does, Netflix is going to lose a lot of business. And I think this is when it may be the downfall of Netflix, because other streaming services, from what it seems like, are going to keep password sharing. So with the lack of convenience that may be coming from Netflix, other streaming services are going to have the opportunity to jump on the convenience and start producing more and more content that is pretty suitable to be watched. I mean, Disney is having a lot of their shows, and so is HBO, and Amazon is working on it, but not as high of a degree. But these other streaming services are going to be more convenient to use than Netflix. And so if Netflix wants to stay in the game and not eventually be kind of lost, they are going to have to stay convenient, or they're going to lose a lot of opportunity, which would kind of suck because Netflix has been doing kind of good with their content lately, but they're going to have to make a choice whether they want to try and make more money, which will probably fail because people will realize they don't use Netflix as much as they think they do. Or do they want to stay convenient and have that continuing base of subscribers? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what Netflix decides to do. I think they are going to try and crack down on account sharing relatively soon. They haven't announced when, but I know soon they're going to be trying to. And so it'll be interesting to see how Netflix fares out and how much other streaming services pick up Netflix's slack. So it's kind of exciting because it means we may start getting more and more good stuff to watch on every platform in order for them to try and lure us all in. So yeah, that's kind of my whole thoughts on this little entertainment news that's happening lately. It's pretty interesting, I think, at least. I hope you found it interesting as well, and I hope you were easily entertained watching this episode, and that's all my final thoughts for today. So I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to tune back in for the next episode, and I will see all you next time. Peace. Thank you for listening to Easily Entertained with me, your host, Bryson Olson. If you enjoyed, be sure to tune back in at Tuesdays, 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for all the latest episodes. We're available on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts. We also have social media on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, where you can follow and get all the latest on entertainment. And until next time, this is Easily Entertained.